welcome to the Ask the Expert tennis and pickleball series. We have been in full swing, and today we have David Pierce with us. He's a high performance coach and founder of David Pierce Performance Training. And he specializes really in maximizing, athletic potential, both physically and mentally. David and I have worked together for years. We started and met when we were on the tour, when he was working with some of the WTA players, including his sister, Mary Pierce, who's a Grand Slam champion. And since then, I know, David, you've worked with, several players tennis-wise, both collegiate, ATP, WTA, ITF juniors, as well as other sports. You and I have collaborated a lot, which I love. It's been great. You do a lot of the fitness training, with the athletes, and you and I will collaborate quite a bit. So I'm excited to kind of get in and kind of hear your insights on fitness and conditioning.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, so we'll jump in with our first question. So, look, tennis and pickleball, we know, are two very different games, and the demands on court are different. But let's talk about, for you, especially since you and you said your son plays pickleball. So, what do you feel are the top three most important physical attributes? So we can take tennis first, and then we can talk about pickleball. But what do they need for peak performance?
Well, I'd like to just state that I feel pickleball and tennis are like cousins. They share the same, very similar biomechanics. Their court is smaller than our court, but I really feel that a lot can overlap. So I think these attributes can also apply to pickleball, with maybe just, being a smaller scale. That's all. So my number one attribute, I need to put that on mute. So it doesn't come through it's linked up to my computer. All right. Yeah, I think I got that. That should not do it again. Okay, so a lot of people would think, oh, endurance, you're going to be out there for a long time. You got to have a great aerobic base. This is true, but a little less than what I feel is more important is having a strong anaerobic base. You've got to be able to perform at high intensity for short duration, and then you've got to be able to recover from that and do it again. So I guess we could say conditioning as a whole is a very important one, but more towards anaerobic, being that short burst, high intensity. And you've got to have that aerobic burst to be able to sustain it for multiple hours. As we know, matches can play with that record match lasting several days. Pickleball is going to be, for me, more of the anaerobic because it is smaller, shorter duration, sets last longer, so on and so forth. So I hope you don't mind me flitting back and forth between tennis and pickleball.
No, I love it.
We do tennis first and then pickleball, but I feel we can kind of just flit back and forth.
Yes, just like a match.
Just like that. Exactly. Side to side. So conditioning levels are important. If you can't sustain a rally, be it 4 shots, 6 shots, 12 shots or more, you're not going to be able to do anything else. So conditioning is my number one. Number two is going to be agility.
Yeah.
Have to have good sensible awareness of your body, control of yourself in multiple planes, multiple angles at all times. So agility is definitely number two. And I put that above power/strength because you have to have strength to generate power. So those would be my top three: conditioning, agility, and then can we say power/strength? Can I use 2 and 1?
Yes, you can.
Great.
Yes.
I hate being limited. And
no,
to be honest, when we look at the whole continuum of athletic attributes, you need them all.
Right.
Tennis players and to some degree pickleball players, but more tennis players for me is really a complete athlete. Because when you look at football guys, they gotta have that short burst speed. They gotta be strong. Yes, they got to be flexible, but really on the football field, when do you see them really? So for me, the tennis player outranks every other sport in the need for all of it. But those being my top three: conditioning, agility, power, strength.
Yeah. And I think your point about, the endurance piece and being able to have those short spurts, yes, you have to be able to sustain, like you said, maybe for hours, but having those quick bursts, and that is different, training that you have to do. So I think that that is definitely a really good point. So you talked about agility. So let's roll right into footwork because
Oh,
it is
favorite.
often overlooked in, especially, in tennis, and I'm sure pickleball, you definitely, need that.
Mhm.
So what do you feel are the best kind of footwork drills that players can do to improve their speed and agility on court?
Okay, so there's such a plethora of things that you can be doing on court for footwork. But if we're gonna try to like simplify and be able to give somebody a couple of things that they could do, all you're really going to need is a few cones. And even if you don't have cones, you can use tennis balls. You can just space tennis balls out on the court. One of my favorite drills that I will use with little kids, even as far into pros as well, is setting up across the baseline a string of cones about 6 feet apart. And here we can do a multitude of drills. The first one that I like to start with is just a basic split step, side shuffle. Every time you get to that cone, split step. You land, immediately push off, shuffle. So here you're working on your lateral movement, immediately back into those good habits of always having that split step so you can be ready to go any direction you want.
Yeah.
More advanced with it, now we can make it a split step to a crossover. Split step crossover. So now we're working in that crossover, which is quintessential to tennis, quintessential to some degree to pickleball. With the space of the court and the fact that a lot of people do doubles mostly on pickleball, they're going to use less crossovers, at least for pure lateral movement. They can get away with just having that wide base shuffle, staying low. They're going to have good footwork, good positioning with that. But if you're playing singles, you're still going to need that crossover in pickleball as well. Then with that same string of cones, you can turn it and now you're going to go linear. Now, instead of going through the frontal plane laterally, you're going to be going linearly, and you can work on that first step forward, split step, first step forward, split step. So now we're starting to really focus in on that first step, which is essential in any racket sport. If you don't have a good first step, you're not going to be moving, you're not going to be getting to the ball, you're going to be playing second fiddle the whole way. Following that one, split step, first step, circle around the cone. Now we're getting some change of direction. Now we're reestablishing our base after coming around that little circle, split step, push forward. So with just that one lineup of cones, you get a bunch of drills that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. And we talk about that all the time because I find, particularly, I feel like with pickleball, I tend to see a lot more like Achilles issues, because I think they're, on their toes and they have to be able to react. So if they're not training through doing footwork and obviously some strengthening types of drills, then they're just setting themselves up for injury. So,
Yeah.
um, all
In
right.
those regards, on the Achilles and things like
Yeah.
that, and this will probably tie into some of your other questions that you had in there, but I'll just kind of touch upon it really quickly.
Mm.
Loading that tendon, being able to hold
Yes.
a plantar flex position, heel up, getting that tendon to hold and load for duration. So isometrics. I'm a huge fan of eccentric and isometric work.
Yes, I would say ISO holds I think are great, and eccentrics, because those are the ones that really best load the tendon. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That's super important. And I don't think a lot of athletes, and then unless they work with somebody like yourself, think about, that. They just kind of do the concentric movement,
Yep.
and they're not thinking about the different ways to load the tendon for optimal strength. So
Mhm.
I think those are great points. So, all right, so let's kind of go into, the best strengthening routine for these sports. And, they do differ from, our general gym workout. So what do
Yeah.
you think the best exercises are for kind of power endurance, and strength, with these sports?
So with that, the average gym workout, people are going in, they're working one body type or one body part. They're going in, they're doing 5, 6 exercises. This is what people think about when they go to the gym. When we're
Yeah,
getting into the tennis, the pickleball aspect, we have to take into account a multitude of factors: overall volume of training, how much are they doing, how much time on court, how much time did they spend conditioning. So we're not going to go in there and do a body part a day. And truthfully speaking, it's not very functional to a degree. Does it make you strong? Yes, it makes you strong. Does strength protect you? Yes, it does. But when we're dealing with our tennis athlete, we want to get in there and we're going to have a multifaceted approach to how we're training them. We're going to get in there, we're going to touch upon some legs, we're going to touch upon some upper body, and we're going to try to tie those into using my preference, myofascial slings, using multiple muscle groups to create a movement pattern, to really get the nervous system, neuromuscularly speaking, firing up, optimizing muscle selection, getting all these things tying in together. Because when you're on court, you're not just using your pec to swing through, you're not just using your brachioradialis to finish that swing. Everything has to coordinate and time together. So to give you a really brief rundown, we get them in the gym, we're going to get some tissue elasticity going on, and we want to use the foam roller. We want to use mobility versus long hold stretches because we don't want to rob that muscle's ability to create power. From there, we want to raise up some temperature. So we're going to either bike, we're going to row, we may jog, we may jump rope. I'm a personal fan of jump rope because that fits in everyone's bag. You can do it anywhere. You need a space of 6 feet around you, and boom, you're firing up your heart, your metabolism, your lungs, you're getting some tissue. Also, you're shocking those Achilles tendons,
Yes.
plyos, love it. From there, I want to get that person activating. I want to activate some key factors, the core. I want to activate the glutes. I want to activate the hips, the scapula. So we're going to start with just some basic band work. We're going to get some external rotations, some elevation of the arms, abduction, things like that. The hips was overlooked for so long. Now I feel maybe people might be doing too much.
Yeah. Mobility.
Yeah, hip mobility, and also playing around with strengthening the glute medius. But they seem to do it in just one fashion. Let's just put that band around the ankles or the knees. Well, what about putting it around your toes? What about putting it around the back of your shoes and challenging that glute medius front fibers versus posterior fibers, because they kind of function a little bit differently.
Right.
So be a little more specific and not as hardcore on just that one aspect, because all that hip work led into some tighter hips. And so if they're not hitting their hip mobility, then they're not balancing it out. So, you got to walk that tightrope. And again, having people like you helping to guide us and educate us and show us, this is what you really need. The rest of this, if you weren't playing tennis, maybe yes, and you were just being a normal person. But again, we got to take into consideration, how much are we doing? What overall are we doing?
Yeah.
With my workouts, I like to prioritize single limb work with my athletes.
Yes.
Because it's
so important.
much more of an ipsilateral sport, a one-sided unilateral sport.
Yeah.
But it also crosses the line. So here's where we come back with the myofascial slings when we're doing anterior oblique work, posterior oblique work, lateral, deep longitudinal, all of those. I love that stuff. It's fascinating. You choose and pick, and being able to periodize it is very important. Being able to say, okay, today we're going to be working. Again, I'll look at things, try to break it down. I know my mind's like a squirrel all over the place.
No, it's good. You're tying it all together.
Trying to. I like to break it down into planes at the same time. So on Monday, I'll be a little more horizontal plane orientated with my pushing and my pulling. We're going to do a single arm push. I'm not a big fan of using benches, because how often are we on a bench when we're on court?
Never.
Unless you're sitting down.
Unless you're sitting on change of ends.
If you want to rack out some chest press while you're sitting on that bench, that might be a thing, but no. So I like starting them off. Let's go from like low level, starting them off with kneeling, tall kneeling, both of those knees down. I find that really works the core at the same time. Progress them to half kneeling, progress them to split stance, progress them to standing neutral base, progress them with a step. So you have all these options that you can run through and get the desired effect while keeping them entertained, because we don't want them to lose the joy. We don't want them to burn out too soon. So being able to ramp it up and then take it back down, we maintain those options and we keep them feeling like, oh, this is still interesting, this is still new, but I am on my end still getting that forward press action, getting that pec, getting that tricep, that front delt working all together, and getting the core engaged while we're getting that rotation.
Yeah, because the core is so important to integrate
everything.
For sure.
We can't do anything if we don't have a strong core, or you won't be doing it for long. Let's put it that way. You can do it for a while, but it won't be long.
Yeah, and you can't really generate power, and then you overuse either your arm, your leg, your wrist, or whatever. And then, as you and I have seen many times, they end up with, injuries in those areas. So, um,
Yes. The
yes.
overuse. Um, I don't want to use a bad word and say stupid, but not intelligent training.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of training has been around for so long that unless they're working with somebody, who's more advanced and progressive and is learning the new latest and greatest and, fitness and conditioning, sometimes, it's the old school of, how people used to train, but, there certainly have been a lot of advancements. And I love how you're tying in the slings. I mean, that's so important, right? To go from the ground all the way up, and those diagonal patterns and how they interplay with really being able to generate power and strengthening in those planes is great.
And to that effect, I like the fact that we have, so I'm a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Not too sure. So with all these new fads that always pop up, I'm a little wary of all this stuff. We don't need the latest, greatest, newest, but there are several inventions that have come through that I absolutely love. The aqua bags, love the aqua bags. Using
Oh,
sandbags, fantastic. Because when you have those asymmetrical loads, when you have those loads that'll shift on you in the middle of doing
yeah.
something. So like just taking a chop, if you're using a lift or a chop and you're just using the cable, okay, that's good. You're learning it, you're patterning it. But now let's do that with an aqua bag. Now,
Ah,
as you're bringing up that lift and you pause at that top, you've got all that water shaking around. So we've got that
yeah,
core activation
I
using
love that.
sandbag, all these diverse loading methods that they have available now. I think those are almost better than just the old barbell. But if you, and many times I've ended up in a tournament, all you've got is a barbell. So
Sure.
of course we can make this work. We can still do a tornado lunge with a barbell, just not going to load it heavy. It's not going to maybe wiggle woggle all over the place, but just trying to rotate as you go into a reverse lunge and come back up and seat that bar back in front of you, you're getting a lot of core work. You're getting more benefit.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great tip. I love that. So, what do you think are the biggest mistakes amateur players are making, when they're trying to improve their game?
So I just want a little more clarification on amateur because amateur is a big umbrella. Is this the guy
Well,
who's
not the pros, because right,
pro?
even though we do know that the pros do make mistakes, so we can't totally exclude them. But the majority of people probably who will be listening to this are going to be, more, on the amateur, level. So I think, just speaking, to them and, the common training mistakes, that you might see. You've kind of already, talked about a
Uh-huh.
few of them.
Touched on a few of them.
Yeah.
When I first hear that question, one of the biggest things that pops up in my head is overuse, overtraining, doing
Eh,
too much,
Yes.
getting out there and thinking, okay, I'm going to do 1,000 forehands. Let's go, let's go, let's go, all in one day. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. And coupled with that is doing it with poor technique. I cannot tell you
Yes.
the amount of people that I've had to send to you or that I've had to try to assist on my own where they are dealing with an injury that could have been avoided if they
Yeah.
scaled down the volume and cleaned up the technique.
Yeah.
So, folks
True.
out there, just getting a few lessons in the beginning is worth its
Yes.
weight in gold. And
Yes.
then a checkup every now and then. Even
Yep.
I know tennis has always traditionally been an expensive sport. I think it's become a lot more accessible to people in the last few decades. Pickleball, totally accessible to people.
Yeah.
If you want to get a racket, you can get a racket for 20 bucks. If you want to get one of those really nice ones, which I'm kind of looking at for myself nowadays because I've discovered the joy of carbon fiber and all this, go for it. But that's going to cost you a couple $100. But in general, it's not that expensive. And then getting a lesson with a professional that knows what they're doing, yes, it is expensive, but it's worth it. And
Yeah.
it probably won't take much because if you get a few videos of that and you can play it back to yourself and you get your friend or your spouse to video you while you're hitting those shots and be like, okay, this is what you look like. This is what you should look like. Oh, okay, let me adjust that. So if you can scale down the volume and not go crazy, even though, it's hard, you love the sport, you want to be out there all day. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your body has got a finite number of uses in each joint and each movement, which usually as humans we don't ever burn through, but professional athletes, that's why we see injuries in their 20s. They burn through that much quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that, and we see it in the pros as well. And I think the
Mhm.
thing I'd add to that is recovery. I always say recovery is the low-hanging fruit, and
Yes.
they overplay. And again, that your point to having a few lessons in the beginning, with the pros, obviously, a lot of times those techniques are ingrained as they're older, but when you're first starting on in a sport, it means it goes such a long way, just learning the proper technique and
Mm,
then being able to identify. So, like, not only working with a coach, but somebody like you or myself who can take that and go, okay, here's what your coach is saying you can or cannot do on court and what you
mm,
need to work on. Okay, now how can we, help to even enhance that further?
mm.
So that and recovery obviously are, are big ones because, that people think, I could skip that today, but skipping
Cool.
that too many times will definitely get you, into the training room quicker than later.
And as much as I love seeing you in the training room, I don't want to
Yeah.
be there too much.
Exactly, exactly. Only when you need it.
Exactly.
So this kind of leads to, how to kind of our top level, players structure their weekly training, right? There
Mhm.
needs to be a balance, and I've seen this a lot between
Yeah,
on-court fitness, and then we talked about recovery.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you can see players, with the pros, I mean, and even the juniors, we're seeing them training for 6 hours a day,
Mhm.
and it's a lot. So,
Yep.
so how do you kind of structure that weekly training?
Well, that is a team effort. I firmly believe in the team. The
Yes.
team is, if you don't have a good team, you're
Yeah.
not going to go far. When people look at the top pros, oh, let's pan to their box. Oh, look at that. There's like 10 people in that freaking box.
Yeah.
Yes, because they know that they have to have an expert for each thing. And it's a shame that the lower level guys can't have that because they really
Yeah.
need.
You
And
do.
why is it that once you're making millions of dollars, now you can have a team? And
Yeah.
that's where federations used to come in. The federation of a country used to
Sure.
always provide that team. And
Yeah.
that's always sorely lacking in America, much better when you go out into the rest of the world. But
Yeah.
that's a side note. So it's a team effort on that structure. I'm going to sit down with the coach. I'm going to sit down if they are lucky enough to have a private physio. Most of the time, you're dealing with a coach and someone like me, the strength and conditioning coach, the fitness guy. We're going to sit down and we're going to say, all right, what are we looking to do? We have to have a clear goal. What is our objective? What do we need to improve? And of course, the player, I firmly believe the player should be involved in this. Some players, juniors, you might not experience that as much. You'll have the parents stepping in for them when they're really young. But I feel as soon as they get around the age of 14, 15, they need to be in this process as well. And
Mm.
we need to decide, okay, we need to get a little faster, we need to get a little stronger. But overall, huge factor is total volume.
Yeah.
How much are we going to do what? And tied into our goal is, okay, we wanted to get a little faster, we wanted to get a little more resistant. Okay, we're going to prioritize maybe a little more fitness this week. We're going to maybe do a double session. Morning's going to be the in-gym strength, afternoon's going to be on court either footwork agility or outside conditioning, depending on, again, on our goal. And maybe this week we'll scale down to just 1 2 hour or 2.5 hour session on court. Or
Yeah.
it's we need more work on court, match play wise. So we're going to prioritize double session tennis and maybe bring it down to just one session, a little longer in the gym. Recovery, huge factor. I believe each session needs the time in between. A lot of people like to mash things together. Oh, I want to do my footwork first, then I want to immediately hit, then I want to immediately hit the gym, and then I'm going to have lunch. You're like, why are you doing this? I mean, if we had a goal of let's see how tired we can get you so that when you
Right.
play your afternoon set, you're functioning from a deficit and how do you handle it? Okay, maybe we'll do that like a little bit. But in
Yeah.
general, you're going to have your session. Now you should have at least in an ideal world 45 to an hour and a half before you get to the next one, you can get a little bit of a shake inside you. You could have a quick little bar. You're resting, you're downside, you're taking down that nervous system. And now
Yeah.
we go to the next session. A lot of people are like, oh, but don't you have to re-warm up all the way? Yeah, but it's a little shorter, it's a little more condensed because the body's already been activated. The neurological system's already been jump started with that first session.
Yeah.
So number one, volume that we look at, and then we're gonna spread it out through the day as best we can. We don't want to, again, overdo. I don't want
Yeah.
them finishing at 7 at night.
Sure.
So again, having goals, team meetings, then we can put a plan into effect.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are all critical. And I think the other thing is, some of the mistakes that I see is when you have a week that you're leading up to a tournament and
Mhm.
what that looks like as you're getting closer to the tournament, right? Which kind
Yep,
of then takes us to the next question
yep,
of, uh, you know, players, I remember we used to say, look, when you come to a tournament, you should be ready to compete. You shouldn't be trying to build, right, a foundation. You should already have the foundation. The tournament is playtime,
yep,
right? So how
yep,
do you have them adjust their fitness? Obviously, we want to maintain, but
yep.
during a tournament, we don't, we want to be in tournament play, mindset and body, and not be trying to build or add too much, because we've seen that up, on the pro tour for sure.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of guys, a lot of fitness guys, or a lot of coaches that do the fitness that want to almost like prove a point to the player they're working with. And it's usually when somebody's starting new or in the beginning of their relationship, and they'll want to show them how much they can do. So there you get the guys who are doing too much. When you're at the tournament, like you said, you're not there to build a foundation. That was done in preseason or in any training block that you get in between. At the tournament, I still believe they should work out. I believe it's good for them because a lot of guys really love it. I know that when I, much younger, was a player and then with players on tour, a lot of them, the gym time was their favorite time. It
Mm,
helps them to kind of not only get in the mindset, blow off a little steam, and also just feel good because working out, we know from a physiological standpoint, gets your endorphins going, gets all the good hormones and all the good feeling things happening. So I still believe that's important. We downscale it. If usually we're looking at a 90-minute session on regular time and training blocks or preseason tournament, I'm going to try to get them in the gym for 20, 30 minutes. I'm going to pick 2 to 3, 4 maybe exercises, 2 lower body, 2 upper body, but again, exercises that are compound in nature that are going to work. And this is where the slings really pay dividends because you can get in there and you can work a single leg split squat elevated with the rear foot. And then at the same time, we're going to have a little press with the upper body. So boom, I just knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone. We do 4 to 6 reps. We keep the neuromuscular system peaked and low loads. Maybe on the rare occasion, I'll see, oh, we might want to increase the load. So we'll go 2 to 3 reps where you just feel that power. We get that post activation potentiation going even before going on a court. Excuse me, need water. I've had guys do something in the nature of taking maybe like a 45 or 60 pound kettlebell or dumbbell and just do like a squat, have a little more of a hold, do 1 rep. That, as you understand, gets the neurological system, get the nervous system, and it's just nice and amped up. We do some
yeah.
med ball throws. So tournament time, we can still get work in, ramp everything down, 1 set, 2 set, 4 to 6 reps, 3 to 4, 5 exercises at most. Short burst if we want to do anything conditioning wise. We get prioritized things like A skips to a sprint, some pogo hops, maybe an iso hold to a takeoff laterally, things that are going to really ramp up the nervous system, give us our most bang for the buck, and be short in duration because we're there for a tournament. Like you said, we're not there to do anything else. We're there to compete.
Yep.
And nowadays, a lot of players use the gym and the exercises to help get them in the zone, fire up the body, and they feel great. I've always been a big fan that when you leave a session, unless we're in preseason and we're really trying to just tear you down a little bit, you should leave that session feeling more energized. You should never be crawling away from each and every session.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially at a tournament, for sure.
Especially at a tournament. So very low volume, very short time, but the work still needs to be done. Because the thing I hate is I have a lot of players, and they're lower level players, 200, 300, they travel on their own. When they
Yeah.
go for 3 to 4 tournaments in a row, another thing I'm not a big fan of,
No,
but they do it no matter what we tell them.
I know.
I've brought people to you, and
I
you've told
know.
them, look, this is the most you should be doing, and they look at you, smile, and go, okay.
Uh-huh.
And then
Okay.
you talk to them 3 weeks later, you're like, so where you coming? Oh yeah, I just did 4 tournaments. Like, what the heck?
Yep.
Why?
I know. Yep.
My
Part of it.
philosophy, and this was given to me by my father a long time ago before any of this newer stuff came about. He was like, you go to a tournament to win. You're not going to a tournament to show up and hope you pass a round or two. You're going to the tournament to win that tournament. So you do everything so that you are there to win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true.
Mm.
Okay, so many players want to keep playing well into, their 40s, 50s, and beyond, right? So what's the secret to kind of staying injury free and competitive, as we age?
Pretty much everything we have just talked about so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah, if you start off just doing these
Yeah,
things,
you will. Your
sets
life
you up for success.
your playing career will be almost unlimited.
Yeah.
The Australian Federation did a study. Tennis was the #1 sport for longevity.
Yes, it was.
#1
Yeah.
sport because it touches on so many of those key factors that give us that longer lifespan. But in particular, you want to have a good training regimen outside of the court. You want to limit, even though you love the sport, you want to limit overall volume of on court. Be smart with your practices, to the point, just right. Eat well, sleep well, all the recovery aspects, hydrate, use all the new sciences. Even if you can't afford to buy those compression sleeves for your legs, go to a place that'll let you rent them for a half hour and sit there and enjoy them for a while. Get
Sure.
massage. I feel massage is an undervalued tool these days almost. It seems
Yeah.
like it's been replaced by more of the
Self.
fancy gadgets and things, but there's nothing like just getting 30, 45, an hour worth of massage done on your body.
Absolutely.
Works
Yeah.
wonders.
Sprinkling that in is so important.
Vital. So if you're doing a well-structured workout, doing your prehab exercises so that you don't need to come see Lisa for rehab, even though she loves seeing you and would love to have you.
Yeah.
She knows that when people walk in her office, it's because something's going on. It's not just to come have a
Exactly.
coffee.
Yeah, it's all in the preparation and the execution. And when you do those things right, then you limit, having to come see, me. So that is true. Okay, so I wanted to get to this one question. So kind of before creating a training plan, how important is it for players to undergo a movement assessment?
Oh, those things, they're useless. That's what most people think. The amount of times when I've sat down with a new player that I'm going to start working with, and I said, okay, we're going to do a battery of tests. We're going to do a couple of different things. They look at me like, is that really necessary? I did it last year. Oh, I'm very happy you did it last year. Well, guess what? You're going to do it again because you're not the same person you were last year. You have changed. You've aged. You've either gained or lost weight. You've improved one section over here while neglecting a section over there. So they are vital. It's like me throwing somebody into a forest and saying, you don't get a compass or a map. Good luck.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we have to know what we're dealing with. So I'm a big fan of using the FMS. I'm a big fan of using another one called the AAA, the athletic assessment. Anything and everything you can do. With pros, we're going to do a DEXA scan. We're going to get lab work. We're going to get a complete nutritional profile. We're going to do all of this. It has to be done so we know where we are and what we're dealing with and where we need to improve. So functional movement screens, yes. Athletic assessments, yes. I need to see you run, jump. I need to see you jump sideways. I need you to jump forward on one leg, 2 legs. I need to see how you lunge, how you squat, how you do everything.
Yeah.
And I want to push it. I want to test it a little bit. When does it break down? And show me at what point, under what load, safely, of course. We're not going to
Yeah.
have them. We're going to be like, yeah, there's a 315 over there. Can you deadlift that for me? No.
No.
But I want to see what we got and I want to see where we can take it. And we have to test. Otherwise, without these metrics, we can't improve. Without a baseline of knowing how you move in the fundamental movement patterns, I cannot help you to improve your athletic ability. So they, for me, they're essential.
Yeah, I agree. And look, movements change, as
Hmm.
you said, obviously over time, but they can literally in a day change because they haven't slept well.
Yeah.
They're under stress. They
Yeah.
need a food maybe that's caused inflammation in their body, and that can affect movement.
Yeah.
So as you know, both of us do the FMS and the Y balance, and FMS came out with which I'll put in the link with the video for this call, but it's called Simeo, and they have developed where you can do a self-assessment. So for players who are on the road who aren't
Okay.
with you, you
Mhm.
can have them tap in and do the functional movement assessment on their own, and it will give them exercises and things to do. And it also does a lifestyle assessment. So it'll ask them questions about, their stress, their sleep, and then it gives them different educational things. So having like tools like that, people like you, myself, who they can come to, but if they're traveling a lot and they're needing, some self-management types of things, that's also a really great tool for sure.
I love that they're doing that. And I love that that's where we are with technology now, that we
Yeah.
have those options available because on the road is where we really need to keep an eye on them and see what's going on and what do we
Yeah.
need to adjust on the fly. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing is that you as a practitioner, you can see what they're doing and what
Hmm.
they're not doing. So then you can, see how they're retesting. You can have them go in and do the testing and you can see, and then you can advise them. So I think it's a partnership, with the athlete, which I love.
That coupled
Well,
with all the new little gadgets like the
yeah,
aura rings, the whoops,
yeah, exactly.
even just an Apple Watch. I mean,
Yeah.
we have
Keep
so
them
much
together.
biometrics that we can work with now and have access to. That's
Yeah,
great.
information is power, right? So it gives you control to, make, little adjustments as you need to. So well, I'm going to do one more question, then I'm going to open it up, see if Patty has any questions. So we always want to talk about, the mental game. A couple of weeks ago, we had Sandra Kampoff on, and we talked all about mindset. It was a really great session, but interested to hear, obviously tennis for sure is a big, mental game, but what are some mental strategies and routines,
Mhm.
that kind of fitness training can reinforce and help players focus, and kind of be confident on court?
Mm. The mental for me is the deciding factor because when you get down to it on the professional level, everyone can crack the ball, everyone can move
The
fast. The only difference is
the mental game.
here and
Yep.
how you can manage your mistakes, stay cool, stay calm. Federer was the best. Why? Because he learned to tame that inner beast. Was he wild when he was younger? Yeah, he lost his temper. I've seen him crack rackets, but then he became the best because he learned to tailor that down.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in starting and ending my sessions with some breathing. When we
Hmm.
start, it's going to be breathing as we're going through our foam rolling or as we're going through our mobility, but just tying in the breath to how you're moving and what you're doing. When we finish, I always like to finish with either some crocodile breathing or some 90-90 breathing. Crocodile breathing, where for people that don't know, you're laying face down. And that's also another assessment that we can do to see how you're breathing. But
Yep.
putting them in those positions where they can ramp down their nervous system or
Hmm.
ramp it up through their breath work is giving them a valuable tool because now they're going to take that onto the court. And if you've been doing this in your outside sessions, it's becoming more of a second nature. So, boom, I just finished a point. I dumped it in the net on an easy sitter. I'm pissed off. Nope. Okay. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to do maybe a 4-2-4 breath or a 4-6-4 breath or maybe a 5-10-5 if I'm really good with my breathing, but I'm going to use that ability to bring myself down, recenter myself. So I'll give a lot of homework, especially to my juniors. First waking up, I want 5 minutes of breathing. Put your hands on your bellies, focus on getting that deep abdominal breath, get that diaphragm involved. End of the day, we're going to finish with 10 to 15 minutes of breathing. So
Yep.
I'm a very big fan of meditation, but now I found a lot of the younger guys, as soon as you say meditation, they're like, huh? Am I going to be under a waterfall? Do I have to shave my head, join a monastery? Well, what's going on? Like, no, no, no. Just think of it as breathing. You're just going to breathe. You're going to sit and breathe. You don't have to think of anything in particular. You don't have to do anything special. As you get better at it, yeah, we'll give you more challenges, but coming back to the breath every time is going to make huge strides on court, off court, and in every aspect of their life.
Yeah, we use a biofeedback tool. I don't know if you're familiar with Heart Math, which is great, where it's a biofeedback where you clip onto your ear and it measures your heart rate variability and you're breathing, but you're also focusing on the heart and what you're thinking. And
Okay.
tying those two things together, which I think, again, a mindset and what we think, and you can see how you can shift your heart rate variability and get into a more sympathetic, mode by thinking positively, thinking about what brings you joy.
Yes.
And then, versus, okay, like what stresses you out? And you can see how that ramps up your nervous system. So training and doing that before you're even on the court. So when you are on the court, then you can kind of shift it, with either a positive word, and channeling that breath, maybe in between points or whatnot to go, okay, I got to get, re-get my composure here. And
It's so true.
so
I love that vision, that the studies that they've done on positive thinking versus negative thinking. And there used to be a method, I forget what it's called. It was a type of biofeedback. And I remember having this done at a tournament where they would like have you hold up your arm and be like, all right, I want you to think negative thoughts and you can't resist the push down. And then the guy would be like, all right, now just think happy, loving, think of the most loving thing you've ever thought of. And you're strong all of a sudden. Yeah.
I
So
know.
that was a turning point in my life when I was young. When I had that done, I was like, wow, what you think affects your body.
Yeah.
And then learning more and more, just like you said now, how your mindset is, the positive thinking is a game changer. And I see such destructiveness amongst the juniors of today. And it just breaks my heart when I'm watching them on court and they're hitting the ball and they miss. And even the ones that don't explode, you can see them turn away and the lips are moving.
Yeah.
Go to them later and be like, all right, so what were you saying to yourself? Oh, they get embarrassed. I'm like, yeah, because I know you weren't saying, come on, that was okay. You can do it. I know you weren't telling yourself it was positive.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's one of their biggest drawbacks is negativity.
Yep. And we've seen it, with the players, the ones that, that can turn it around and have that mental strength, and ability to make that shift in the middle of a heated match, for sure, makes a difference. So
Huge difference.
well, awesome. Well, Patty, if you have any questions, now would be a good time to mute yourself and come on and let us know what you got.
Wow, thank you. It's a wealth of information and just validates to get a coach. I've only played twice. Last time was like 8 months ago, and I just knew I had to take care of the shoulder and work with Lisa, and I retire in a month. So we're building the foundation, as one of Lisa's favorite words. But it didn't occur to me about practice with footwork, the cones, just like other sports, basketball, softball, which been so many years. Like, oh, okay. Because I just know if I didn't get coaching, I'll go out and I'll just blow everything out. I will be just like my old days. I'm past that. So you reinforce that with all these methods. So I have a question here. When you're working with the pro tennis players and during the middle of the tournament and all the strength training, do you guys use the BFRs, the blood flow restrictors?
When we have access to that, yes. I love using that because it can, again, greatly reduce the amount of time we need to do, and we can get more benefit out of it, get more hormone production, get more growth hormone producing. We can get a good sense that they worked out for themselves without having to overdo it. So I love BFR. BFR for recovery also is a great thing. a lot of guys don't realize this. They have the newer models out there with the little computer hookups that will oscillate the contraction. And so it's just like putting on a pair of Norditek sleeves. It's going to help compress, decompress, and get them in a better recovery. So yeah, love using BFR, but it's not always readily available. When you go to tournaments, if you're not traveling with it, then you're hoping they have it, and there's a chance they won't. So I do try to make a point of always encouraging my players to get BFR cuffs to travel with. I'm not as much on the road anymore as I used to be. When I was, yes, I made sure the players always had the appropriate tools needed.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time and sharing everything. It's just been wow, awesome. I'm
It's
very
my
excited
passion.
to get back in and continuing working with Lisa and Danny and the Back to Normal team.
Keep doing that, because Lisa actually got me out of a very bad place. I had a very bad lower back injury, and without her, I would never have been able to deadlift again. I would never have been able to play without pain anymore. So yes, she is a great person to work with.
Awesome. That's
It's
cool.
a team effort. I love it.
Always.
Well, awesome. Well, David, thank you. Tell our listeners kind of how people can find you if they want to, reach out or learn more, about what you're doing.
Well, that's a bit of a tricky one. I don't have any websites.
Okay.
Like most of my kind, we are word of mouth from player to
Okay.
player. I do have an Instagram account, David A. Pierce 76.
Okay.
That would be one of the few and only methods that they could find me. Otherwise, you have to come down to Bradenton, Sarasota, and you can find me either working out of IMG with different players over at some tennis courts nearby called the BTC Center. Otherwise, I try to stay off the grid.
Or
I've been
you
a
you could
select
come to
few.
me and I'll connect you.
There you go. Go to Lisa. She knows how to find me.
Oh, well, thanks so
When I
much.
have a player that needs professional recovery work and needs to be put back together, I always tell them this is the person you're going to go to, because there's no other choice.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's been great. It's worked out really good, and we
Yep.
help each other and help our players, and so that's what it's all about. So thanks for taking the time. This was awesome. I learned some things. I know Patty did, so really appreciate it. Thank you so much.